When discussing the history of visual novels, there's the commonly shared notion that the early to mid-2000s will always remain the golden age of the medium. While I don't personally share the doomer perspective, which claims that visual novels are a dying form of media, there's no denying that many of the greatest VNs and VN franchises originated precisely from that era. Among those success stories, there were also plenty of developers releasing quality products, most of which have been now largely forgotten, despite being just as commendable as some of the iconic classics. In today's video, I want to highlight one of those underappreciated developers, a studio that, during its glory days, produced visual novels whose production values would rival even the big league names of the era, earning anime and manga adaptations, as well as all-ages console ports of their games. Hey there, this is Mirren, and these are the top 5 ApRicoT-developed visual novels. While not their first game, Maple Colors certainly represents one of their most emblematic franchises. The story is fairly simple. You play as Saku Yoshijiro, a transfer student who, even after 2 weeks of entering the school, still struggles to find his own classroom. He was assigned to the 2B group, a class shunned by the entire school. Despite this, his classmate and class rep Mirai doesn't let that reputation get to her, often using extreme methods to get the record straight. This strong sense of justice of hers, however, ended up leading to trouble. One day she spotted a group of students from the drama club bullying a classmate, prompting her to grab a steel bat and immediately run to rescue him. Smelling trouble, Yoshijiro chased after her, but upon arriving at the scene, he lost his cool and ended up giving the bullies a beating. Once the school caught wind of the incident, an emergency meeting was called. There it was decided that, should the entire class want to avoid indefinite suspension, and Yoshijiro being immediately expulsed, they would need to participate in and win the school festival's drama competition. That's more or less the extent of the narrative. What follows are the hardships the protagonist faces in order to convince and recruit his classmates to properly prepare for the stage play, while also trying to overcome the boycotting attempts from the drama club. Unlike most visual novels, however, you will be spending quite a lot of time with the game's gameplay portions, where the game asks you to explore the school grounds and interact with the students. This is one of the things of the game that really grabbed me. It gives the school a very nice sense of believability as you see the students hanging around, doing diverse activities. There's only one small caveat here: the difficulty. Don't be fooled by its cutesy art style. This game really doesn't mess around. You are always running against the clock, and the timing for some of your classmates' schedules can be extremely tight. If you aren't at the right time at the right place, the game will simply go, "Nope, better luck tomorrow, bozo." Same goes for the mini-games, which you will need to clear multiple times with increasing difficulty if you want to get all the scenes. When starting the game, there's an option to choose between easy or normal difficulty. Go with easy. Trust me, this isn't just me getting older. The game can be straight up BS, so you better stop typing that skill issue comment down there. But even with some of these frustrations, there's an odd charm to this game, mostly thanks to its snappy humor and eccentric cast. I will admit I have a soft spot for the type of vibe the game goes for, but I still think the game itself is quite great. Plus, one of the routes was written by the same writer as the Funbag fantasy games, which, if you know, you know. So overall, this is one I can easily recommend for any comedy VN enthusiast.
Ayakashi.
While Maple Color was certainly a title focused on comedy, their next game, Ayakashi, would instead opt for a slightly more serious approach, perhaps influenced by the trend set by other visual novels, such as Fate Stay Night. This game ended up receiving both a manga and anime adaptations, which good luck finding it, since there are at least a dozen other more popular anime with the name Ayakashi in it. As for the story, you play as Yu. That's his name, Yu, not you as in yourself. Anyway, he's a high school student who, ever since his close friend died 2 years ago, became a husk of his former self. Unlike other high school students, however, he has powers, including the ability to twist spoons with his mind, which he occasionally uses to impress his schoolmates. One day, Yu finds a letter warning him that some people are after him, inexplicably signed by his friend who had passed away. Not long after, he encounters a mysterious girl named Emu, who has a strong resemblance to that lost friend. She too has supernatural powers and seems to know far more than what she's willing to share with you. Eventually, Yu realizes that there are others with similar powers, which come from the Ayakashi. These are parasitic creatures that give their host powers in exchange for their vitality. Think JoJo, and you won't be that far away. I think Ayakashi is a game that makes fantastic use of its production values, using transitions and other visual tricks to great effect. The game's steady pace and constant twists also contribute significantly to its enjoyability. In addition, I found some of its set pieces and premises to be quite original, such as how the Ayakashi were some sort of ticking bomb, which created a nice sense of urgency, an idea I thought was pretty neat. Probably my main gripe with it was that it did repeat some fights a tad too often, making the presence of the bad guys feel a bit repetitive. On the other hand, it's clear that this was a visual novel made with passion and that they aimed for an ambitious and more serious narrative, especially compared to their other titles. And I do think it delivers on that front. After releasing Ayakashi and its fan disc, Ayakashi H, their next game would be the sequel to Maple Colors, aptly named Maple Colors 2nd. If you ask me, I believe this is the best game in their catalog, combining all the elements that make their titles stand out. The premise itself is quite similar to the first one. In fact, you could say that it's more or less a reimagining of that story. The protagonist, Togawa Sojiro, is a transfer student who wants to take this chance to once and for all become a popular dude with the girls. He decides to put this plan into action without delay by confessing to the first cute girl he finds. Great strategy, by the way. It always works. Naturally, things don't go as planned. After being unavoidably rejected, he roams around the school grounds when he comes across a tanuki who leads him to a fellow student in distress. Sojiro valiantly jumps to the rescue. Valiantly, but also without any solid plan in mind. The bullies quickly see through his bluff, and as they close in, the tanuki pushes him forward, causing him to clash with the boss of the bullies. In the chaos, the bully's cigarette goes flying and sparks a fire, which the school administration immediately picks up. It is decided for Sojiro to be assigned to the notorious 2B class, and, as you might have guessed it, the entire class now faces the threat of indefinite suspension. To avoid this fate, they have 1 month only to prepare for and win one of the 3 main competitions at the school festival. As the main catalyst of this whole conundrum, Sojiro must now go around recruiting his new classmates to prepare for the festivities. As a sequel, Maple Colors 2nd is essentially a refined version of the original. Obviously, the actual story and characters are completely different, but it's familiar in all the right ways. Its biggest strength, when compared to the first one, is how, depending on which competition you end up tackling, the overall genre of the story changes. Some routes are more action-oriented, while others lean more heavily into the comedy. This time around, there's also a better sense of cohesion among the members of the 2B class. In the original, some characters were clearly there as jokes, whereas in 2nd, you can see that they put a bigger effort into creating better character dynamics. The gameplay portions are another that has seen quite a few changes. They essentially streamline some of its aspects, such as removing the time limit and lowering the difficulty of the minigames. They also finally added the function of being able to save at any time, something that was missing in the original. At the same time, some of those changes did slightly diminish the grounded feeling that the school had. In the first game, students moved around following their own schedules, but in 2nd, it's all a bit more static. Still, I believe the vast majority of the changes added to this 2nd entry are clear improvements. And for that reason, if you were to play just one game from theirs, I would recommend checking this one out.
Unival, Paranormalがあるストライク.
Their next game is one I've already talked about on this channel, Unival, Paranormal, Girls Strike. Out of all their titles, this one is most likely the one that leans on the comedy side the hardest. In this game, the protagonist, Shinichiro, is working as the landlord of a lodging house, whose tenants are girls possessing supernatural powers, such as a short-tempered extraterrestrial girl, a sorceress, or an immortal goddess with the worst of luck. Shinichiro does his best to conceal the group's existence from secret organizations seeking to take advantage of their abilities. But the constant infighting makes his life nearly impossible. Then one day chaos erupts at the school when paranormal events begin to unfold. Doors suddenly stop leading to their destinations, as if people are being randomly teleported all around, leaving everyone in disarray. A couple of intruders came to ambush Shinichiro and the girls. During the struggle, a classmate and friend of theirs gets caught up in the whole mess, ultimately being crushed by a water tank. In that moment, a mysterious power awakens inside Shinichiro, allowing him to inexplicably bring her back to life. While the game has a pretty good early hook, the truth is that the story itself is not really that in-depth. In reality, the main appeal of this visual novel are the comedy gags the characters exchange. Once again, the snappy presentation elevates the humor, delivering these jokes with great timing. Probably my favorite one was all the creative ways the game found to kill off, and then immediately resuscitate few. As for the routes, they are somewhat shallow, but I found Arsh's route to be very endearing. I think the main appeal of this title is how digestible it is. Nothing really drags on for too long, and the cast is very likable with mindless but fun group dynamics. This is probably one VN that's not really for everyone, but hey, I think it's neat.
Ouka Sengoku, 信長ちゃんの恋して野望.
That leaves us with Ouka Sengoku, possibly their last hurrah before focusing almost exclusively on Nukige visual novels. The story stars Ayakashi Mitsuhide, a young boy who was used to a life of poverty, struggling to make ends meet, until one day when he's suddenly accepted into the Sengoku Academy. There he's welcomed by a legion of students who capture him and carry him away to their leader, a young girl going by the name of Oda Nobunaga. The game isn't shy about its historical references, in particular the Honnouji incident, when Oda Nobunaga was betrayed by his retainer, Ayakashi Mitsuhide, disrupting his campaign to unify Japan. In fact, this is basically its narrative focus. The main gist is that everyone accepted into this school is actually a reincarnation of a historical figure, thus explaining why they all were given those names since birth. So when Nobunaga learned about Mitsuhide entering the school, she grasped the opportunity to finally take revenge on him. However, after he unexpectedly saves her from an enemy sniper, she feels indebted and decides to support him financially, while also making him one of her vessels. While the premise is suitable, dumb, and over the top, this is one game that gets more serious as the story progresses, eventually reaching a rather epic climax. I found it fun watching Nobunaga and Mitsuhide forced to cooperate, even though she still resented him for what he did in his past life. Obviously, a big part of this game's appeal is the whole historical twist. It kind of feels like reading the dumbest history lesson you have ever received, but in an amusing way. Now, I must confess that personally I don't care that much about historical-themed VNs, so I might not have been the target audience for this one. In fact, I felt like some of the fights tended to drag on a bit too long, making the later sections of the story slightly tiresome. Still, I had a decent time with it, all things considered. Also, Teramoto's route was surprisingly solid. I would recommend this game to people who are into historical-themed VNs, like the Sengoku Koihime series or Chin Shingura, but are looking for something a bit more lighthearted. And that covers what I believe are the best games this company released. I think it's kind of interesting the way comedy and action are prioritized from game to game. There are also some fan discs that I skipped, which I will probably check out at some point in the future since they look decent enough. After Ouka Sengoku, though, it's pretty clear that ApRicoT shifted focus to its Nukige brand, ApRicoT Cherry, although they also released a single game under their Moog-focused imprint, ApRicoT Plum, titled Nadeshiko Drip, though I'd bet it turned out rather forgettable, as it remains the only game produced under that brand. They did publish 2 more games under the main ApRicoT brand, but having played them, I can assure you that they are nothing more than Nukige VNs, with just a teeny tiny more narrative effort put into them. Isekai Lovers could have been decent enough, but I think it dropped the ball by immediately separating the cast once the very short common route ends. But it's not like it's terrible or anything. Maple Colors HHHH, on the other hand, that one is, without question, one of the worst visual novels I've ever played. I honestly prefer to pretend it doesn't exist. Nevertheless, I do think that this is a developer worth remembering for its highs, And if there was any title in this video that caught your eye, definitely give it a shot. I'm honestly surprised how little people talk about them, considering their uniqueness and charisma. Out of all of them, I think I would recommend Maple Color's second the most. While there are some references to the first, you can still play it as a standalone title. Although, the first one is pretty fun too, and not that long either. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Marin out.